Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We are your hosts, Karan and Kristen. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
Today, we are talking with John Perez. John is the CEO of the Rising Warrior, which provides a holistic approach to healing, growth, and betterment of military veterans, active duty, and first responders. The Rising Warrior helps warriors go from surviving to thriving in all aspects of their lives. And John is also the co host of the Rising Warrior podcast. Back in episode 10, we talked with Lance, who's my husband, and Sean Lazio about their work with the Rising Warrior. And so, John, we're excited to be talking with you today about how you're continuing to take pirates from the Navy. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love that. Continue to take pirates from the Navy. Yeah.
Yeah. We blew Sean's mind with that. Oh, Kron blew Sean's mind with that when we talked with him a while back. So we'd love for you to take us on a journey and tell us the story of how you got to where you are today. So tell us about your pirate journey.
Cool. I will lead you down a journey of multiple countries and big changes. So I'll start early. I'll start when I was born in Puerto Rico in 1991. And I moved to the U.S. in 2003 under pretty difficult financial circumstances. My family had been, my dad had been sued. We'd sold all our stuff. It was a really difficult trial. It was like a year long, and he was eventually acquitted and found not guilty. But the whole process kind of upturned so many things for us. And my family had originally wanted to move to the States, but this really accelerated everything. And so we moved, and we were, homeless pretty much right when we got here. We lived in my dad's friend's basement up in Massachusetts in the wintertime. So it was a tough beginning early on, and that time it's like a massive shift for us just being in a new country. And although Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S., as a lot of people may know, it's a totally different reality, totally different culture. So moved here, changed a ton, and throughout my time in schools, towards the end of my time in high school, I stumbled upon my senior year in high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I didn't know what I wanted to pursue, and I ended up going to a college fair for minority students in my high school, and I came across a guy wearing a nice white, at the time I called it a suit, but it was his uniform. He was a Navy guy, and he introduced me to the Naval Academy, and that opened up a whole new world I wasn't expecting back then. Talked about things like honor and courage and commitment and all these ideals of leadership that I literally, truly in my life had never heard other than in the history books that I used to read. So I took that journey, went to prep school for them in Rhode Island for a year. Then I went to the Naval Academy for 4 years, during which, big school. But it's not that big of a school, but it's a big name school, preparing to lead people in the military. And then again, that huge paradigm shift in terms of what I was going to do in the world. Decided to join the Marine Corps from there. And this is all the anti-pirate section, by the way. This is like the conformist part of the game here, being in very much the man. And so I was in the military, and I was very rigid at the time. I was if anybody who knows me back then, I was very, I was very into it. So I got in the Marine Corps and did that training. Was stationed out in 29 Palms, California, at a LAR unit. So this is basically military reconnaissance. It was great, and it was difficult. It was a hard unit to be a part of, especially we actually, when I commissioned in 2014, we had just pulled out most of our troops of Afghanistan, so I didn't experience any combat myself, and I was stateside the whole time, just partly due to my unit. Just roll the dice. That's what happened. But we worked really hard. We prepared a lot, And as I go into the military, there's a huge opening of, again, a whole new paradigm of there's a version of the military that's sold to you while you're at the Naval Academy, and then the version that's real in real time. And they are very, very different. Very rose colored and kind of high and mighty while you're in school. And then when you're out in the world leading Marines, it's a totally different experience. You get to see behind the curtain. Um, Great experience. I'm really thankful for it. It pushed me to my edges, and um, uh, the pirate stuff started later on in my journey there. I was quite depressed. First, pretty isolated out there in the desert, basically doing the same thing over and over again, working really hard, not going anywhere or doing anything new. Um, and then at the same time, just my own kind of internal turmoil of, do I really want to be doing this? Do I want to be part of the military? Is this what I signed up for? All the things that I'm sure many of us have had, and many vets have had questions about that before or after get out of the military. Decided that I wanted to get out of the military, and my first kind of pirate act was taking a hero's dose of mushrooms out in Joshua Tree while I was still in uniform, which is a tricky little thing to do at the end. It's about a year out, and I didn't have a guide. It was like a guy, a friend, and we went out, and it's way too much. And I realized I was very. What I drew from it was that I was really alienated from myself, um, and I saw myself. It was like a dark experience, and I actually saw myself really separated from myself and distant. So that changed a whole paradigm for me, because it opened up a realm first of consciousness that I wasn't even aware of. I was like, this can't be real. This is crazy. And then at the same time, it opened up that feeling of alienation was really, really palpable. And so that last year was a challenging one, a difficult one, and one that I was ready to get the fuck out of there. I ended up selling all my stuff. Did an internship in New York City for about 3 months at a newspaper, at a HuffPost, which is one of the most insanely different things to the Marine Corps ever. Had a great experience there, learned a ton about the media, and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I just went traveling, went to Europe, and I traveled for 3 months, backpacked. I like to do kind of a vagabonding style where I go for like 7 to 10 days at each place, just hang out and get to know it really well. And that's when the questions of meaning and purpose for me really got strong, is when I was finally free of it, and now all of a sudden I don't have any anchor anywhere. It's the first time I really didn't have anything to anchor me anywhere, which in hindsight I find to be a gift, but back then it was tough. It was a hard thing to be challenged with. And so, but I continued on with my travels. On a whim, again, another pirate thing, I was like, I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar. And I've had a guitar for a while, but I never really got into it that much. And so I packed my bags and moved to Austin, Texas, which I'd only been to once. I didn't know much about, but I had a buddy who lived there. So we moved in together with another roommate. And then I literally learned guitar and started coaching lacrosse at high school in the city. Did that until COVID hit, and then moved to DC later on. I worked in corporate. So this is the non-pirate stuff. I got back. I sort of got spooked by COVID and got scared of what was going to happen. I decided to take kind of a well-trodden path a lot of military vets, especially officers, go into consulting. Did that for about a year, and then in the meantime, I went to a program that you guys, or I know Kristen has done, and Lance as well, Training Camp for the Soul, and that was really the breakthrough for me, like the biggest, most impactful program that I have ever taken. That really changed my trajectory completely. So I really tapped into why I was feeling stuck at the time, and it changed my whole transition to deeper trust in myself, much more guided by my intuition, less shame about the things that I want to do and really desire in my heart. And it's really what opened up a huge, even bigger space for me to explore, and without fear or shame. And so that has really blossomed into the work that Lance and I are doing with the Rising Warrior. And that is how I find myself today, as a semi-pirate.
Only semi-pirate?
Semi-pirate, yeah. I pirate in, but I'm not a like wave the flag type of pirate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You don't have your flag yet. That's what we need. Okay.
I gotta get a flag.
All right, we'll get you a flag.
I'm wondering, like, as someone that's never been in the military, you said that like the reality didn't equal what was in the brochure.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you had thought you were getting into versus what the reality was.
Great question. It's a big one. I'd say the first thing that came to mind as you were asking that was that the ideal of leadership that you're taught in training, or even for us, it's a little different because you have a 4-year school where you're reading about all the great leaders in the military and you're being groomed to be a professional officer. That's your whole career. The ideal doesn't live up to the reality, and by that I mean this. I mean, I'll use one as an example. Doing the right thing even when no one is looking. That is what people used to say to us. That was integrity. That's how they define integrity. And one of the things that you start to realize as you're in the military is there's no exact right thing, because it varies on the situation. It varies on the perspective. And when you start getting into the nitty gritty of how the actual like bureaucracy of the machinery works, if you try to do the right thing by the institution, then you let down your Marines or the people you work with, and vice versa. And so you're always stuck between a rock and a hard place, between doing the right thing when there is no right thing. So you have to decide. It puts you in a compromising position no matter which decision you make. And if you don't find that to be accurate, or at least you're not seeing that, then you're completely blind. You're like partly what's it called? Cognitive dissonance, because you're kind of just in your lane. And the blessing and the curse of being an officer was that especially I was in a staff, so I ran the logistics for my battalion, is that you get to see how the money works. You get to see how the parts get resourced. You get to see how things get fixed. You get to see how deals get made, how deployment units get deployed. So you start to see like how the larger strategy of how things work, and then you also understand the micro of like, a 19-year-old Marine of mine who drives the truck that we're doing a patrol in. So you start to see the difference between what that guy thinks and how he rides in his truck, and the pride that he feels in his job and what he cares about, and then the distance between what's actually happening in terms of like how the thing works. Yeah, I think that's an example of how there's a separation between it, what's actually happening versus what we idealize would be happening. I mean, now that I know a little bit more about marketing, you start to realize how much of it is just really great marketing. You're like, oh wow, heroes, and there's bad guys, there's good guys, and we're just fucking killing it. So I think that makes it a lot more obvious now.
Thinking about the marketing from back when Lance was in the Army. First off, I know the Army's changed its motto several times. Have the Marines changed their motto along? So just the Army likes to do that?
Yeah, I don't think so. The
Okay.
few that proud the Marines, I don't think they've ever really changed it. So, as far as I know.
Yeah. So one thing I thought was funny while Lance was in the Army was that it had changed a couple of times. I don't remember what it was for most of the growing up of my life was when I'd see it on the Army, see the ads. It might have just been like go Army or something. But they changed it around the time I was in high school, and then changed it again while Lance was on his last deployment. And on his last deployment was Army of One. And I was like,
right,
Army of One? Like what kind of team is this? Like,
that sounds like
some
staffing shortages.
There's not enough people. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like in order to get people to want to come in, they would change the motto for it too. But I remember with that one being like, what in the world? Like, why would you want to be an Army of One? Like, isn't this something you're going in for, the camaraderie and all that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it shows you. I mean, there's layers and layers to this. Like, there's partly it's if you just look at it as like geopolitically, like the country needs an army, the army needs soldiers, the soldiers are usually young men who are working class, and they're driven by a lot of us by ideals of patriotism, of service, of sacrifice, of heroism, and so the messaging will change depending on like what that time and place needs in order for people to bring in. I mean, it's what I've been saying a lot lately is it's there's all of it exists at once. Like you can feel heroic in the work that you're doing, and you can be exploited by a system that's trying to get more people into it. When there's a time of war or whatever. So it's both of those things are real. It helps people when we have conversations around sensitive topics like that with people.
How much of it is like brought on just by like poverty and having education paid for? I mean,
Oh, for sure.
as a Canadian, hearing a lot of conversation in the States about like, more affordable education, like post-secondary education, a lot of the comments I see is that people won't then join the military because that's how you get schooling paid for, which sounds like a terrible reason to like join the military, if that
Yeah,
makes
see,
sense.
that's another thing. Yeah, I know you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why I joined. Well, that was part of the reason I joined. I didn't, I was a smart kid and I had some opportunities, but it was nothing gonna match like what I was gonna get in the military. It's certainly not at the Naval Academy. 4 years of college education,
Mhm,
all paid, and then, well, it's paid for, but you have to serve 5 years. So you're like, oh, it's not really paid for. You pay with your time.
mhm,
Um, so I think that's huge. It's a huge reason why people do it. It's a huge reason beyond even if you mix that with like the idea of doing something for your country or kind of that messaging of it, it creates like a lot of it creates a pull in people to want to serve and also to take care of themselves, because a lot of us came from difficult homes and difficult backgrounds and experiences that aren't clean. And you'll find that for a lot of the people that we're working with now that um, they the military became the pressure cooker that intensified their trauma, not the other way around. It may have created some new events like PTSD out in war or some of those things, um, and a lot of that started when they were young.
mhm,
So I think to your point, yeah, having that as a opportunity, and I used to see that as something exploitative, like it was evil to me, something that I felt really it hurt me to think about that I was that kid, and at the same time in that place where I was, I remember exactly how I felt, and I was like, I'm actually really thankful that this exists, because even though on the other side of this it may be a huge risk for me, I don't know what else I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this. So like again, can those two things fit at the same time? That's
mhm,
how I like to look at it.
mhm.
Mhm. So yeah, you spent all that time in the military, came out, and now you're taking military and first responders, and you're teaching them some pirate ways, minus the pirate
Mm.
flag. So,
I gotta get my flag. Yeah.
so yeah, with what you're doing now with the first responders and veterans, would you share a little for us of what you're doing and what that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So for first responders right now, what we're working with is creating workshops for um, building resilience, and I think for us, what that means is the capacity to endure the difficulties of the job, like the traumas of seeing fires and doing all these kind of intense things that we ask first responders to do all the time. The difference between a first responder and a vet, in many ways, or at least in this area, is when you're in the military, you go out there, you do your thing, you come back from your deployment, like you can kind of there's a rest period, and although there's still healing that happens afterwards, you are resting. For a first responder, the traumatic events continue to happen over and over and over again. And it's not necessarily something that happened to you. It could have been something you witnessed. It often is just something you've seen, some traumatic event. Um, and so for them, we want to build these workshops to help them understand what trauma is, give them some tools to act like real proactive tools that they can use to support them after, before events, and things that um, yeah, it's kind of taking a personal development angle to a community that's mostly reactive in the way that they are serviced. So there's a lot of mental health resources, but they're like, hey, go talk to this. therapist, psychotherapist after you've had an event, or if you're freaking out, quote unquote, or if something's wrong in your life. And hey, we've realized that there's a bunch of dimensions to that. Like if you haven't prepared yourself for that difficult job, then you're gonna just build tension, trauma over your career, and then it's gonna be really difficult. The effects that are gonna be both the physical and psychological effects, which by the way are connected. There's no such thing as a separate thing. Um, so for them, that's what we want to do, and allow them to create that resilience within themselves. And then for veterans, it's really more about the transition. So post transition, and that can mean anywhere from 6 months you got out to 20 years you got out. It doesn't really matter what the timeline it is. Are you still struggling with, meaning and purpose? Are you still disconnected from yourself? Are you drinking a bunch? Are you unable to communicate with your family and friends? Like all these little markers that keeps people separated from living their fullest expression, their fullest life. Yeah, in that survival state, we want to help them actually go into a state of thriving where they understand their patterns, they understand how they've shown up, and a lot of that is the same thing we teach first responders, is just at a deeper level, so that usually when you're running across, as I found in my own life, when you're running across these, like, what is my purpose? What am I doing? You've been externalizing your purpose your whole life. You don't actually know what meanings means. You haven't really identified what the source of these patterns are, and so it's a great opportunity um, to get support around that and coaching, which is again something in the veteran community that doesn't really exist. There's a couple of us little pockets that are doing it, and I think um, it's I believe it's going to become a bigger thing and a much more decentralized thing.
Yeah, I like that you have something like separate for first responders, because when we talked to Lance and Sean the first time, like we talked about the fact, like I used to be a police officer, and I mean, in terms of like rest, like I don't do it anymore, so I have that rest.
Yeah.
But I found that the police service I was in was good at like providing support around specific incidents.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's the day to day, because every day
Yep.
is some sort of
Something.
incident, right? And those things really weighed on you. What I saw in the police services I was in was, a lot of people coped with alcohol, a lot of failed relationships and marriages. Just a lot of behavior that, looking at it now, is definitely not what I would consider healthy behavior, as ways of like coping from what you're going through and what you're seeing. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to be involved, but you see some shit that most people don't see in their day-to-day life, even once, never mind like on a shift by shift basis. So that's really awesome that you guys are working with like this building resilience. And so what is the when you say like building resilience for those first responders, what kind of things are you what kind of tools are you trying to provide them?
Yeah, I know you guys are huge into these, but we want to use some language tools for communication. You talked a little bit about relationships, like, what does it mean to hold presence for someone else? What does it mean to, as you're describing someone else's situation, not assuming what they mean, and saying, well, hey, I imagine that this is what you're feeling. Can you speak more on that? So having those communication tools are huge, because it both helps you on the job and it helps you with your family. So if you're able to communicate with somebody who's in an intense situation, they don't know what's happening, and you can actually settle the situation, clearly communicate, and get what you need out of that environment, as well as soothe whatever's going on in that situation. You can really change the paradigm of how it is. We want to teach people actually how to move as well. This is part of the workshop, as well as teaching people that breath and movement is deeply connected to our psychological state. And so when you're in a highly upregulated state, you tend to literally tense up your body. And for those of you who are first responders, if you have a lot of low back problems, you might just not be breathing, among other things. And so teaching people like the absolute super simple basics of breath, and we're not talking about breath work in the upregulating sense, like the performance sense. we're talking about the down regulating, like how do I bring my system down from that upregulated state of like seeing a trauma event or getting in a shootout or being in a fire or whatever it is. And then the actual tools to know if you have a traumatic event and your body's storing that trauma, how do you release that trauma in the body? What does that look like? What even is it? And can you be okay reliving those experiences, which a lot of us will through dreams or things will happen. Something triggers you. I've talked to buddies who are like, they're in a store and all of a sudden somebody like whatever brings a cart in front of their cart and then they freak out. And so how do you actually deal with that particular situation? How do you downregulate? What's going on? Can you separate the story from the actual experience? And so we want to give out those tools in the most simplest form possible so they're able to use them in real time in their lives.
Like for veterans and first responders both, they could likely have some like big traumas. Like I saw a horrific event, and I'm guessing for a fair amount of people though too, it's compound traumas and that they don't even realize that are happening, like a stressful situation followed by another stressful situation followed by something
argument at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, and I have had plenty of compound with small t traumas build up, teaching world. There are a lot more parallels between teaching and what first responders and like military do than I feel like should be the case. But
my mom's a teacher. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but yeah, like a lot of that build up. So how, because dealing with the bigger traumas, like people realize that's something I should deal with. So what are some tools that you recommend to people to handle the compound ones so that they don't compound upon each other, but you can deal with them in the moment to move forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the truth of that, the answer to that question is that you have to relive it in some ways. You have to get to the root of what that trauma is, because what's often happening is that you are creating the compounding yourself by reliving the experience. And so by getting to the root of what the trauma is in your life, and it's usually something that happened in your childhood, we can start diving in a little bit deeper into releasing that trauma. And so you're going to hold tension in your body that you don't even realize that is happening. And what I mean by that is this is part of like the somatic experience. So we teach people how to actually target where in their body they feel that thing, especially when they're going through a memory of it. So if you can tap into this, whatever the memory is coming up for you, and it will support you through a meditative process where you identify that, where is it in the body, and let's label it, or let's call it something. What does that look like in your body? Can you separate the memory, the thing that you're thinking about, from the sensation you're feeling? And then from there, can we just put that story to the side and just feel that sensation, however uncomfortable it might be? So we create a ton of safety around that. We let you be in that experience. And then as you move through that experience, what is available at the end of that? Like, do you feel lighter? Do you feel more connected? Is it possible that this is something that could change for you? And so it's about being truly open and courageous in the finding the root of it, and then just having grace. And for most of first responders and vets, softness. I know that's not a popular word out there, but softening to actually just allowing and open up that space for you.
Now, follow up with it. A lot of what my opinion is on why, like with first responders, why they are having so much stuff going on that's not dealt with is because when the bigger traumatic events happen and they're told to go to like the therapist or psychologist, a lot of times I believe they're not willing to share because they're afraid of what might happen with their job. So with what you guys are doing, how are you changing that so that they can have like that space to properly get in and deal with the trauma without that fear of Like I could lose my job if I say I'm actually scared to pick up a gun and go to work the next day, or go into that burning fire. Things
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that.
it really begins with a great deal of vulnerability amongst the people who've already gone through a transformation of their own, or they've experienced that being open has actually opened space for them in their lives. So um, this is a little bit of a calling to those that are who have done that for themselves, who had gone through either the personal development or therapy. Like the more you share, the more it opens up other space for other people to share and for to heal. And that doesn't mean you have to stand in front of a stage and be like, open your heart, but it does mean that um, opening that channel of communication and changing the narrative around trauma and difficult situations on the job and saying like, hey, we have acknowledged that this is a difficult experience as a human. Can we be okay that when you have a traumatic event, everyone looks and goes, hey man, are you good? You need a couple of minutes, you need a day, you need 2 days. Like, seriously, go take a bath, like, relax, enjoy yourself, let off a little bit of steam, and not by drinking, like, actually by taking care of yourself. Drinking is going to do the complete opposite, it's just going to suppress it. And so, changing the narrative, and a lot of it's going to happen at the leadership level. A lot of it's going to happen at the level of like small firehouses, police um, departments. Like if you're the guy who's like open and vulnerable and has gone through that, being able to share it and be like, hey man, honestly, I'm gonna like a business. I'm gonna show you the benefits of these things. I'm gonna tell you, my sex is better, my relationship is better, my breathing is better. I've lost weight, all these different things, so you can actually share what is possible for them if they're open to it. And I think that is a huge thing that being in business has taught me. Like show people what's possible beyond just you know being soft for the sake of being soft.
I like how you started with the sex is better too. Get their attention.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things, like when I had gone through some traumatic events, one of the tools that we used in my police department was peer counseling. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like psychiatrists or whatever that or counselors that we were talking to. It was other police officers that had training and I guess volunteered or joined the peer counseling group, so that it was like people like yourselves that had been through situations, similar situations, or knew the job, knew the life, and all the demands of it, and having your peers tell you or give you that permission to be open and vulnerable is very different from Dr. Smith that I've never met before and doesn't know what I have to go and do this afternoon when I get onto shift, right?
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
think carrying that on to like the work that you guys are doing, like you guys have been there and lived it, right? So it's that shared experience also, and that understanding, I think, is also helpful when forming connections and to allow
Yeah.
people to be open and vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought the peer support. That those are actually the leaders that we're working with to set up these programs and these workshops because um, again, we found that those are the people who know what works and what doesn't. And even what they have is limited in scope because they can't dedicate a ton of resources to it. They've got their full-time job, so there's no full-time peer support person. It's just a guy who's in the firehouse who's volunteering to run this thing and with other firefighters. So um, I think you're exactly right. Like, hey man, I've been in your shoes, brother. Like, put the beer down, come hang. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a swim. Like, let's hang out in a different way, and let's have a conversation about what went down and see if I can support you there. It definitely helps to see somebody who's been in your shoes and who has gone through that change. That's a huge thing.
So with the work that you guys are doing, what is the social rebellion that you guys have started?
Social rebellion. Um, I think for me, what that means is just a whole new model for how we interface, how we help veterans and first responders start a journey to healing. Um, and I think there's a lot of people who they have really big hearts and they want to support vets and first responders. And there's a lot of funding for nonprofits. There's a lot of different things out there. And what I've found is that it's a personal journey that every person must take if they want to actually heal the thing. So like if someone stands in front of you and gives you a class for 8 hours about trauma, you're gonna be like, all right, cool, whatever, man. Like it doesn't do anything for me. So it's for me what I see is a future where there are a bunch of rising warriors out there that are doing work to actually help people work through these things. And I found the most effective way to be coaching because I can teach you the information, but that's not necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing is to actually guide you through this process, like kind of like you said about having somebody who's been through it, who can walk you through those steps. Like, hey man, I've been in that place. Here's a little reframe to help you move on to the next thing. I see you. I can see you in this difficulty you're having, and like I honor you and I respect you for that, and for your courage to move through it and support yourself. And so I think that is what I see. It's a new totally way to teach people how to thrive in the first responder community is actually how to take the stigma out of being open and loving to yourself. And in the veteran community, it's much more about how do I supporting veterans in a really authentic and heart-centered way that enables them to actually thrive in their lives after service. Because there's a lot of cool resources out there, and what I've found is that there's a point at which community isn't quite what you need anymore. There's a point at which kind of passive support isn't quite what you need anymore. You need to get to the point where it's like, okay, this is my journey. I need to do some breakthrough healing here in order for me to actually enjoy these things. Because right now I can't enjoy these free resources that are out there. I need to invest in myself to get to the next level. So that's what I see out there. A bunch of little companies and organizations that are doing work for smaller groups.
Along the parallel lines again of with teaching, I was just having a conversation recently with someone about if in schools, like kids are being taught how to not be independent, but like being taught the emotional things and being taught how to become more individual and make decisions on their own as they're growing older. And that I didn't think about this until more like today, it popped in my head, but people aren't able to teach these things because they don't know it themselves. So in order, like to say, to pass it on to kids, you need adults that know how to do these things themselves. So same with what you guys are doing, like expecting first responders or veterans to learn how to do this on their own. It's not going to work unless they have somebody showing them who's already been there ahead. So yeah, it's great that you're there as well, being like, hey, we've been there, we're leading the way, and allow us. I mean, those self-help books and those things you're reading only go so far until you're able to apply it into your life. And hi, I can help you.
Yeah, exactly. To help you gain context, and also like the great part about coaching is that it's not just you go past the level of like book reading and podcast listening. You go to the level of like applying it to your life. Like that's kind of where it gets messy. You're not sure what to do. And then you have a guide who's been there who's like, oh, actually in that particular situation, here's some reframes. Here's an idea. Try this. What are you able to do here? And then, a lot of it isn't even active. It's asking you questions about where you're actually getting yourself stuck. And so it's in many ways, it's very individualized and personalized. And what's great about that is it just enables you to go like, you don't need me to empower you. You are already empowered. Like it's a decision you can make if you choose to do so. So all I am is a guide. I'm a mountain guide, and I go, hey, that's where we're going. Are you ready? And they're like, all right, cool, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that is a barrier though, having veterans and first responders to even ask for help?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a challenge. And what I've found that for me is that it makes me a better student of the game and a better coach and a better facilitator, because it literally makes me go, okay, how do I say this in a way that allows them to be a little bit more open? And so what's really interesting about it is that they're not in the beginning, they're kind of like apprehensive, like, oh, I'm not sure about this guy. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. He's going on walks and talking about loving yourself. And
those walks.
as you get the opportunity to share a bit more in layers, people can kind of digest it just a little bit deeper and more. So there's a long lead of people trusting you. So they first know you, like you, and trust you. And I think the trust area takes some time because uh, it's like a spurned wife or a partner. Like you need a lot of like soft kind of like, hey, it's okay, no worries, I'm here, I'm just here to support, until people are ready for it, which is again very surprising for door kickers and badass people who are trying to do all this cool shit. And at the same time, it's totally understandable. I definitely was in those shoes. It took me a while.
Mm-hmm. Going on those stupid walks for your stupid mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like going for walks and loving ourselves is just like the perfect summation of what we do. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, go for a walk and love yourself. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I went for a walk and was loving myself, and I realized like most of what is blocking us from enjoying that walk and really being present with it is all the stuff that we just talked about, all the trauma, all the acute trauma, and also like the compounded trauma that you guys were talking about. Like there's so many things you haven't dealt with yet that are keeping you in these loops of stories of danger over here, like, oh my God, there's danger that way, and you're constantly on alert. So you're like in a little bubble of self-protection, and you can't actually like bring your head out and breathe and say like, oh my God, it's 65 degrees. What a fucking great day. I think that is what's hindering us from actually experiencing it. And you can hide that in all manner of like ways of being badass in the world, but at the end of the day, you're the one who sleeps with you, dines with you, eats with you, moves with you. It's just you. So if you want to stop wearing a mask and actually enjoy your day, I recommend you go for a walk and love yourself.
Figuratively.
Figuratively.
Sorry.
Go for literal walk. Figuratively love yourself.
Yeah. No figurative walks. I mean, you can do it. We'll
Yeah.
Get your mind out of the gutter, people.
I was just picturing myself walking through my neighborhood and loving myself, and I'm like, that's not going
to work. Yeah.
Maybe if you're in the forest.
In the forest.
Maybe, yeah. National park.
We actually had a conversation with, I think it's the last one we had with Ruslanna, where she talked about literally going into nature, and she found the perfect rock and she loved herself in nature. And she's like, I recommend it for everybody. Mm-hmm. She had a very secluded spot.
Yeah, that's true.
It was not the neighborhood.
I can't say I've done that. That's awesome.
How could I have forgotten that? That was just last week we said.
I know.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, we talk a lot on here about creating good trouble. What does good trouble mean to you, and how are you creating it in the world?
Good trouble. I love that term. Good trouble to me is rule breaking for an authentic reason that actually leads you or other people to living better lives. And here's the thing, like the way I see it, there's a ton of rules that are completely fabricated. They don't, many of them are outdated. Many of them don't make any sense. Many of them are conflicting. Many of them are counterintuitive. They're not at all useful. And so creating good trouble, the first is about, can you be grounded in yourself and say like, hey, it's okay if some people don't like me, or if somebody thinks I'm bad because I do these things. Have a deep sense of confidence and trust in yourself to be able to create some good trouble. And in my mind, creating that good trouble is about calling bullshit and being like, hey, I think you're full of shit. It's great. You can have your own experience, no problem. And I'm going to create some boundaries. Like, this is what I'm willing to accept, and this is what I would like to do in the world. And in institutions that can be really loud, or it can be really quiet. Like, you don't have to be like a guy standing with a pirate flag waving it across. It could just be in your experience with your little team and your family, whatever it is. And I think that good trouble idea is really cool because it just lets you go like, nah, you're kind of full of shit. I'm gonna go do my thing over here. Gives you an opportunity to fuck off a little bit.
You reminded me of a question when you now I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you reminded me of a question that I'd had from this game that some friends were. It was an intimacy game or something. I had questions and you asked people.
I've played that game. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question in there that was a really it was a really good one. That was like, when you are living out of alignment with what you're saying, how would you like somebody to let you know, to broach that? And so it was an interesting question too. Oh, because you said calling people out on their shit, and like that was an interesting question. Like, how would you like me to call you out when I see you out of alignment? So
yeah, that's a great. I think I would answer that as like, hey, I love you very much, more than what I'm about to say, but I think what you just said is kind of full of shit. Well, take the soft talk out, is full of shit. It give you an opportunity to be like, hey man, I love you, and you said these are the things, and you're not living that thing. So which one is it? And honestly, a lot of times you don't even realize. You're like, oh my God, yeah, I am completely off the mark here. I'm not at all living in integrity with what I said.
Yeah, when I heard that question, for me, I was like, oh, call me out on it. And then I was thinking about it as I heard some other people answer it, and they're like, lovingly pull me aside, say these things to me. And I was like, no, I stand by that. Call me out on it. Like, please, like, I probably will just look at you and like put up a wall and be like, but it will sink in. And I might I may not argue. But if you just come in there like, yeah, this is what I noticed. And lovingly is good, but also like, call me out. So
yeah, I think that's a really great practice with people you love and trust in your inner circle. I don't know that it's anybody coming up to you calling you out. It's like, I'm not going to listen to you just because you're some guy. But yeah, having somebody in your inner circle that's useful until the point at which I think when you've been practiced enough and when you've had enough development and really when you're truly attentive to your thoughts and your actions and your patterns, can you recognize those things within yourself? Like, I just did something that was out of integrity for me. Let me go back to it. Is it because I hold a belief that's kind of outdated and I haven't really created new ones around that? Or is it because I'm scared? It's because I'm ashamed? So you start digging a little deeper. So I think the best call out is from yourself. And then the next best is going to be from when you're in that beginning of that process as your close friends and family.
Yeah. Speaking of call out, I think we had this on a past episode where we were talking about, instead of call out, call forward, because calling out, you look at the language of it is more like somebody pointing the finger and being like, this is how you did this wrong, but calling forward is more gentle. So can you call yourself forward?
Yeah, I do actually really do love that. Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that I was like, oh, it's lame.
Yeah.
But the more I've used it, the more I've realized that a lot of language we use to call people out or something around that line is based in being led by others or what's the word I want to use, dominant structures, like where someone is leading and someone is a follower. And in that system, there's always somebody who's calling you out or like telling you what to do. This is very much in the military, like the hierarchy stuff. Like, oh, you're fucked up, Marine. Like your haircut's fucked up or whatever it is. It only works in those situations. So when you're out of that paradigm of like needing people to call you out all the time, calling you forward actually is a really useful thing to say. Like, I actually want you to be better. I love you and I want you to be better. Not, hey, piece of shit, go do this. Which is, by the way, this is a real thing that happens in the military constantly.
So being like, a piece of shit, go do this.
Absolutely, yeah, all the time. Yeah, this is the thing they don't put on the billboards. Yeah, your senior enlisted leaders are gonna call you a piece of shit sometimes.
Which is funny because you go into boot camp and you're gonna be degraded for the whole entire time. So it's funny that you have the thought that it'll be any different on the other side. Yeah,
the the degrading transformation sometimes. Yeah, part of the coming into the military for sure.
Well, it's a mindset I will never fully understand. So I'm glad you're
No,
able to
yeah,
help
it's
people.
I'm trying to, yeah, I know. This is one of the things that when you get out of the military, you look back and you go, man, we really got shit on a lot, like constantly. From the day you start, you're getting shit on. And I have shit on people. I have been that person in training, like, training younger guys. And that was right and true for us back then. It's like, you need to toughen up. And, uh, I mean, it works to a degree, but it doesn't work for making happy and healthy human beings. It works in the sense that you become a rule follower and you get scared all the time and you're followed by shame and fear and guilt all the time. Um, so when you're creating an army, I guess that makes sense. But when you're actually trying to be a human in the world, that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I wonder if that is like that's how you build the army, because
100%.
because if you're thinking for yourself,
That's
just
not
like
good.
no, just like how we had there's a video of British troops being given LSD and they just wandered around and they started climbing trees. They didn't want
Mm-hmm.
anything to do with their gun. It's
Nope.
something like that, giving them substance free, not actual LSD, but free your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
People
I think
actually going to want to go to war.
you wanna create the most effective rule followers when you have people in the military. Um, and one of these things I used to see as evil or bad or wrong when I was in it and sort of suffering because of it. And now in hindsight, I can see, I see the utility of it in that system, and at the same time, like it's not useful anymore, especially when you're out. And I think a lot of those patterns continue where you're not there's no drill instructor in front of you anymore, but you're shaming yourself just like they would. Like, oh fuck, I'm a piece of shit. Like, oh fuck, I need to do this. I should do that. I should shitting all over yourself. And I believe that the real transition happens when you can shift out of that paradigm completely and go, oh, that was a period of my life that for which those things were useful. Like when you're in a firefight, you don't want to have a lot of individuality. You want to have like following rules and being able to think on the move or whatever. But when you're um, creating a life of your own, when you want to actually live out your dreams, that is literally the opposite of what's going to be helpful for that.
So yeah, you told us some about the Rising Warrior and Building Resilience workshop and your one-on-one. Is there anything else you want to add to what you're up to?
I think that's it. We'd like to build our one-on-one practice to go deep with individuals, and like I said earlier, it takes some time to build that rapport and that trust. And so we want to build out our one-on-one clients and show them like, hey, I'm going to show you what's possible if you go on this journey with me. And as we grow that, we'd love to create like group programs for small groups for veterans to join in and have this experience together, because we found that it's even more transformative when there's 3, 4, 5, 6 other people with you who are not necessarily in the same situation, but who can see you. I mean, I talked to a recent friend who I gave a free coaching call to, that when you see another veteran, another man especially, and see them at their deepest vulnerability, just sitting in a room watching them go into a fetal position of softness because they're really dealing with deep trauma, an area opens up for you as well. It creates this ability to be way more empathetic and open and seeing people as individual like humans who need support, rather than like we're all vets trying to do badass shit in the world. Like, yeah, that's true, and healing happens in relation to others. It's not necessarily something that needs to be done out in the open, but your capacity to be mirrored, your behavior to be seen by both your coach or facilitator and then the people you're in it with, creates a much deeper bond, in my opinion, than any kind of like boot camp thing ever would, because that's like we did something hard together, and a true transformation of spirit and soul and heart is more of a, I saw you at your most like raw, authentic, vulnerable self. That is a deeper connection, and a much more worthwhile one in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I have an extra squeaky dog happening right now, so I've been
Extra
on mute. She's
Is it Bear?
It is not Bear. It is Daisy being
Oh, it's
very
Daisy.
squeaky. Sorry. So I've been on mute. I'm listening.
You're good.
But what I want to ask is, where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Oh
and
yeah,
Rising
for
Warrior?
sure. So for me on Instagram is where you'll find me most of the time, at John D. Perez Cruz. And then for the Rising Warrior, at the.rising.warrior on Instagram and Facebook, and then therisingwarrior.com and the Rising Warrior podcast. So right now we've got a veteran mental health check-in that we created for everybody. If you're a first responder, you can absolutely use it, but it's meant for veterans, and really it's about the first layer of that experience is, can you first understand the thoughts that are running through your mind? Can you label them? Can you actually name them? Can you downregulate your body enough to actually go through an experience where you go, what is the thing that I'm dealing with right now? Dump all that, identify what's there for you, and then actually do something, take action from something that uncovered there. So Veteran Mental Health Check-In is available on our link in our bio. So go check it out if you're interested in going a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I like that. It was a couple of years ago. I had like a triggering event from something that happened like 15 years ago when I was in the police. And I was working with our friend Ben Joy that we've had on the podcast, and he was coaching me through. And that's one of the things that we went through, was just notice and name, like notice what was going on, name that. And I found that exercise to be really helpful when I was dealing with something from like you talked about physical release. I was dealing something in the moment with a very physical release of something that happened like 15 years ago because of one of those triggers. So I love that you do use the same process, and like, yeah, it's really helpful. Highly recommended when you're going through the shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first layer. Exactly. And then if you're ready, past that layer, come check us out and we'll have a conversation about a little bit of one-on-one coaching.
And with the Rising Warrior on Instagram too, I'm going to point out that the dots are very important in between the.rising.warrior, because if you put in something else, you're going to find somebody completely different. So dots are important. If you want to find them, you put them in.
Don't forget your periods. Yeah.
So yeah, before we ask the last question, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
I really just want to reiterate the point that the transformation after transition from the military is not something you can intuit. It's not something that you just like, oh, I figured it out and I'm now fine. It does require a guide, and so I say that as a beckoning call to those of you who are on the fence about that. It doesn't have to be the Rising Warrior, but I do recommend taking a personal journey. A lot of people are experimenting with plant medicines and a lot of other things, and so make it a personal journey that you're going on for transformation and healing, and be open to knowing that it's messy. There's no end point. You're not going to get anywhere. The purpose is to uncover deeper and deeper layers and to kind of rid yourself of as many illusions as you can possibly can, so that you can live a fuller, more deeper, more connected life.
And the Rising Warrior is a great place for that.
And if you want to come hang out with us, hit us up.
John and Lance are lots of fun. Sean's in Alaska right now, so you may or may not hear him from him.
Yeah.
And how would you recommend our listeners go about starting their own pirate life and taking small, bold actions in their life?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Start your own inner revolution. I think there's a lot of focus on, even in the pirate life world, of outer action and like being bold, and I'm all about it. I'm all about planting the flag, and that's fucking awesome. And for me, the journey to doing that has been much more grounded and centered when I started my inner revolution to go, hey, whatever's happening here is not leading me to the life that I desire. And I don't even really know what I deeply desire. So if you can start that journey and say, like, I'm not going to read any more podcasts or any more books, like, I'm actually going to pay for something, go on a journey, join somebody, get a guide, experience something, give you that experience of starting that inner revolution so that you can actually change your life.
The what is it? The hardest rules to break are your own. And
Yep.
the what was the other one? It's from the Be More Pirate book. It's like the hardest rules to break are your own. And then there's also another one about getting over yourself. I forgot what the quote is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start inward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I love that sentiment. It just lets you like go before you go out there, like sit with yourself. What are you gonna do? Set an intention and then actually focus on the thing that you want once you've set that and once you've actually created that space for yourself. That actually lets you plant a stronger flag when you actually stand for whatever it is that you're into.
Once you have your flag that you want.
Yeah, I need to get one.
Well, John, thanks. Karan, did you have anything you were going to add?
I was going to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
with the squeaker in the background.
And before I said thanks, I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else.
Thank you guys. Mm-hmm. This is a great, awesome opportunity. I appreciate it.